Hi, good evening, everyone. Hello, and welcome back for yet another fascinating session where we demystify a lot. And today we have picked up a very, very relevant topic. The topic is all which the entire country rather has been excited about for a couple of weeks now. This is about budget for 2022, and which this budget, while it got presented yesterday, the union budget came in. I think they, while the budget speech happened, I think there are a lot of questions and queries around it. But before we jump onto budget, I hope all of you are doing good. You are feeling safe. If you are doing good, please don't forget to hit the like button. Just go and hit the like button so that we know that you are doing safe in this season of pandemic. I mean, health is of paramount importance. I would also would be happy to know the cities you are joining in. So if you can go in the comment section and just note down the city from where you are logging in, that'll be great. Yeah. So, I mean, while as I was saying, while yesterday we all heard about speech, there are a lot of questions. I mean, and that's bound to happen because of this is a union budget for India, which is like second largest population and one of the fastest growing economy we belong into. So today, for being able to answer and demystify what the budget has, we have with us Mr. Niraj Kumar. Niraj is a Chief Investment Officer of Future Generali, and he'll be addressing the key highlights for Union Budget. Welcome on board, Niraj, and thank you. Thanks for
Thanks,
pulling
Ashish.
time out and joining us today. Yeah.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank
Yeah, and before Neeraj takes over, once again, I would request you to please feel free to share the link of our live session with your friends and family who can join in. Neeraj is a veteran. He handles one of the largest portfolio. He manages the entire investment, so he understands investment, taxation, and today we'll be looking at budget from our eyes of a household. इस बजट से एक आम इंसान की जिंदगी पे क्या असर पड़ा है, आज हम वो जानने की कोशिश करेंगे. ओवर टू यू नीरज.
Okay, thank you, Ashish. Very good evening to all of our audience. I hope all of you are taking good care in this difficult phase of COVID and keeping yourself and your loved ones safe. So let's now really start uh, on today's discussion point, which is budget 2022. कल हमने निर्मला सीतारामन ने पार्लियामेंट में बजट संसद में प्रस्तुत किया. हमें ये जानने की कोशिश करनी है और हम आज इस इंट्रैक्शन का जो मेन मुद्दा ये है कि हमें समझना है दैट मे बी ये बजट क्या था, कैसा था, हमारे लिए ये क्या चेंज करेगा आगे आने वाले दिनों में, whether it would really make much of difference or no. So related to all these questions that maybe perhaps all of us would really have in your mind or you would have in your mind, I would try and address it as we really go. So let's really look at maybe what has happened in India in this budget and how it is going to really change. If you really ask me, I would say the union budget gets a good thumb up from all of us as it chooses to bite the bullet by focusing on growth and going slow on populism and dole out. हमें बार बार इन लास्ट फ्यू ईयर्स, लास्ट मे बी ऑलमोस्ट 4 to 5 years, वी हैव बीन सेइंग दैट जो विकास के लिए चीजें जरूरी है बजट उसको लेकर के आ रही है. वन बाय वन वी आर एक्चुअली सीइंग दैट मे बी लास्ट फ्यू ईयर्स से बजट उन्हीं चीजों को ज्यादा महत्वपूर्ण और प्रोमिनेंस दे रहा है जिससे हमारी विकास की गति को तेजी मिल सके. ये बजट उसी परिप्रेक्ष्य में है, उसी कंटिन्यूटी को आगे बढ़ाता है. This government is rightly betting that a fast growing economy, agar economy is growing at 7, 8, 9%, will take care of many problems, whatever we really have, or maybe Janta is really facing at the grassroots level. So the idea is to give a fillip, give a push to the economic growth so that the relative जनता जो नीचे और जो masses है they start really getting better because they would have more employment, they will have maybe more opportunities, and hence maybe a lot better in terms of what they were maybe few years back and now what they could really be. So the idea is this itself. The idea is that maybe okay, can we really make this country a 5 trillion and maybe post that maybe upward of maybe up the top 3 nation in terms of maybe the world GDP. This is the idea, this is where maybe perhaps the focus is. And clearly we can see that government is taking almost everything and doing almost everything to ensure that we really move to that path. एक कहावत है, लोग बोलते हैं टीच अ मैन हाउ टू फिश rather than give a fish. So high fiscal deficit is no longer a pariah as long as money are spent on a capital expenditure and investment, and that's exactly what this budget aims to do. And the local and foreign investors, but in last few days you would have really seen कि market has been buoyant. कल का मार्केट 1.5% ऊपर था, आज टुडे भी मार्केट वाज एक्चुअली अप because the budget has taken care of growth path, and that has really given a lot of confidence to the investors. It also doesn't have anything which is like maybe perhaps people were really fearful कि शायद ये होगा. In terms of taxation angle, it could have been maybe some more taxation that could have come. So they have not touched the taxation. Maybe on a good part, maybe on a certain extent, there could have been maybe some taxation benefit given it to certain masses, certain people, certain section of maybe people. That also has not come, but there is no negative. One could just argue that maybe perhaps what is the biggest positive that you really have? So the positive is a विकास की गति को तेज करने वाली बजट है. पूरा जो फोकस है वो कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर और इन्वेस्टमेंट के ऊपर है. जो पूरा फोकस जो गवर्नमेंट ने इस बजट में दिया है, दैट हमें फर्क उतना नहीं पड़ता एज अ नेशन. थोड़ा अगर हमारा बजट डिफिसिट थोड़ा अगर ऊपर चला गया, ओके, फिस्कल डिफिसिट थोड़ा हमारा ऊपर हो गया, so we are not really as worried. What is really paramount to us that we should really continue to grow closer to 8.5 to 9%. That's the idea. So budget has actually been made in a view that can we really see a growth of next year also around 9%. As you all know, this year we would really be clocking growth of close to around 9%. Next year also the idea is that maybe okay, we should really grow closer to around 9%. And if we come out of this type of budget every year one by one, then I'm sure that maybe as a country we would really move very soon maybe those milestone in terms of we whether we really have a 5 trillion or we really are looking at the top 3 top 5 nation in terms of maybe the GDP. And the masses which is like maybe has been having a problem in terms of maybe not having so much of employment. They've also been impacted because of the COVID. Those to a large extent the problem could really go. So that's the idea. Budget 2022 has re-emphasized the need of capex driven growth oriented budget, and that is what we really see in this budget. It has also tried to take care the transparency bit. अगर आप बजट में देखेंगे पहले बहुत सारे प्रावधान होते थे, ऑफ बजट होते थे, बजट के बाहर एक्सपेंसेस होते थे, चाहे वो एफसीआई फूड कॉरपोरेशन ऑफ इंडिया का बैलेंस शीट था, एनएचएआई का था, रेलवे का था. इस बजट के अंदर इन सारी जो ऑफ बजट आइटम थे उनको समाहित करने की कोशिश की गई. ये कोशिश पिछले साल शुरू हुई थी, इस साल उसको और एक्सटेंड किया गया है. एंड अभी ऐसा लग रहा है कि जो हमने जो देखा है बजट डेफिसिट वो है, दिस इंक्लूड्स, दिस इज अ परफेक्ट right number that maybe anybody would really say this is going to get better, not going to get worse. And why I am saying this? Because जो बजट्स के जो अरिथमेटिक्स होते हैं, जो मैथमेटिक्स है इन टर्म्स ऑफ नंबर्स, अगर आप उसको गौर गौर से देखते हैं, जो बजट में जो एजम्पशंस लिए गए हैं, या वो एजम्पशंस आप देख लें रेवेन्यू एस्टिमेट्स जो होते हैं, जो टैक्सेशन का जो एस्टिमेट लगाया गया है अगले साल का, वो एक्चुअली अगर इस साल से कंपेयर करते हैं तो बहुत लोअर लिया गया है, बेसिकली कंजर्वेटिव है। मेरी समझ से बजट ने एक स्कोप रखा है अपने आप में कि इवन इफ समथिंग गोज रॉन्ग इन टर्म्स ऑफ द इकोनॉमी, वी शुड नॉट रियली हैव अ मिस, एंड इफ एवरीथिंग गोज राइट एज वी रियली होप सो, हमें अगर 9% ग्रोथ मिलता है, then these numbers in terms of fiscal deficit also could really get lot better. So जो अभी projected number है 6.4, it may not really be 6.4, it could really be on the lower side as well. So overall बजट का इंटेंट पॉजिटिव है, ग्रोथ के लिए सपोर्टिव है, एंड इट हैज लॉट ऑफ कैविट्स वेयर एक कोशिश किया है इस बजट के अंदर कि उन चीज़ों को हम एड्रेस करें. हाउ डू वी रियली क्रिएट मोर एम्प्लॉयमेंट, हाउ डू वी रियली इंश्योर दैट मे बी ओके बजट के जो नंबर्स हैं वो सही नंबर हों, ताकि कल को और एक साल बाद और मे बी 6 महीने बाद जाकर के सरप्राइज ना मिले कि ये नंबर हम अचीव नहीं कर पाएंगे. चाहे आप डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट के नंबर देख लीजिए, टैक्स बायंसिस के नंबर देखिए, you will find that all these numbers are relatively on a conservative side, which basically means that बजट में प्रावधान किया गया है कि हम स्पेंडिंग भी करें ग्रोथ के लिए, और उस स्पेंडिंग में कल को किसी रीजन से प्रॉब्लम भी नहीं आए. So it has done more or less everything to ensure that we really rightly move towards our trajectory in terms of the growth. That's the idea. And what other stuff, maybe taking this discussion to another pointers, कि ट्रांसपेरेंसी की मैंने बात की. ट्रांसपेरेंसी क्या लाया है? तो अगर आप देखते हैं लास्ट 2-3 साल से, तो गवर्नमेंट हैज टेकन सेवरल स्टेप्स टू improve the transparency of budget. Some of the steps, if you really see that, maybe in last few years, one was FCI, the other one was NHAI. Then we have the Air India ka liabilities also has been now settled in this budget allocations this year. Then next year, BSNL ki jo budgetary allocations also has been actually put maybe in part of the budget itself. So all put together, the trust on the budget number is increasing with the every passing budget. The off-balance sheet liabilities were always a bone of contention with the external rating agency. S&P's, Moody's have always been really saying that you need to get more transparent. And this is where we have come. They were looking at, and they have looked at maybe in past with the suspicion in terms of the number. Today we really can say that this is very transparent and there is no reason to have any suspicion on these numbers. Government has used the strong tax revenue to clean up its off-balance sheet liability, which bodes extremely well for the confidence of investor, and which is what we have started seeing in last couple of days. And that's the way market has also really behaved. फिर अगर देखना है कि बजट में जो ग्रोथ का जो एक्सेलरेशन है वो कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर से आ रहा है. प्राइमरली क्या है, उसमें इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को पुश किया जा रहा है. They have also announced policy support to new age sector, सनराइज सेक्टर जिसको बोलते हैं, जैसे आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस हुआ, जियोस्पेशियल सिस्टम्स हो गए, ड्रोन्स हो गए, सेमीकंडक्टर्स हो गए, क्लीन मोबिलिटी सिस्टम हो गया. ना अगर आप एक गौर से देखिए तो ये कौन से सेगमेंट है? ये वो सेगमेंट है जो आज जिसका बेस बड़ा नहीं है, बट अगले 5 साल 10 साल में यही वो सेगमेंट होंगे जिनके बड़े बेस बनेंगे. And budget is trying to address that maybe India should get ready for in this space. आत्मनिर्भर भारत, अगर ये सारे सेगमेंट अगले 5 साल 10 साल में बड़े होंगे तो हम आत्मनिर्भर तभी बन सकते हैं जब हम इन बिंदुओं पे काम करना शुरू कर दें. And which is what budget is trying to address. बजट ने गति शक्ति को पुश करने की कोशिश की है. गति शक्ति से क्या है बेनिफिट? अब ये तो एक जार्गन लगता है कि गति शक्ति नाम दिया है, इसमें है क्या? गति शक्ति का मतलब होता है कि रिड्यूस लॉजिस्टिक कॉस्ट. अगर आप कॉस्ट यहां से, अगर आपको सपोज दिल्ली जाना है, दिल्ली से सपोज आपको चेन्नई जाना है, तो जो कॉस्ट है एक वाहन के जाने का और एक सेगमेंट जो एक ट्रक लोड को ले जाने का, उसका जो यूनिट कॉस्ट है उसको कम करने की कोशिश की जाए। इट मीन्स बेसिकली हम प्रोडक्टिविटी को बढ़ाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। अगर हम प्रोडक्टिविटी बढ़ाएंगे, हम बाहर ज़्यादा अपने आप को compete कर पाएंगे, दूसरी कंट्री में अपना माल भेज पाएंगे, एंड दिस इज व्हाट इज रियली नीडेड. सो गति शक्ति is a very very good thing that maybe government is really thinking and trying to do on maybe on these lines. They have also saw that maybe cryptocurrencies में डिजिटल रुपीज को इस बजट में प्रावधान दिया गया कि इसको टैक्स कर रहे हैं. गवर्नमेंट ने एट दिस जंक्चर दे हैव नॉट लीगलाइज्ड, दे आर जस्ट टैक्सिंग इट, because there were section who has invested in those segment, and those segment so far were not really paying tax. It's a time, if there was a gain and if those gain has actually come to someone, some segment of the society, they should really pay the rightful tax to the government, to the masses. So that's the idea. Then you have the energy transition and the green bonds. Then you have also higher capital expense and everything. So गवर्नमेंट ने बहुत सारी चीजें करने की कोशिश की है. एक जो चीज है जो मुझे बहुत अच्छी लगी, हमारा एक सेगमेंट है जिसको हम बोलते हैं एमएसएमई, जो मिडिल सेगमेंट, जो हमारा बैकबोन है इंडिया का, जो स्मॉल इंटरप्राइजेज जो होती है, और मिड स्केल जो हमारी जो इंटरप्राइज है, वो एक बड़े तबके को एम्प्लॉयमेंट देती है इंडिया में. और उसके लिए जो बजट में प्रावधान किया गया है, बिकॉज हमें पता है और हम आप सब लोगों को पता होगा कि उस सेगमेंट में कोविड की वजह से सबसे ज्यादा लोग इंपैक्टेड हुए. तो उस चीज को, उस सेगमेंट को, उस सेगमेंट को ठीक करने के लिए बजट ने जो बजटरी एलोकेशंस है उसको ऑलमोस्ट 35-36% बढ़ाया है, विच इज अ वेरी वेरी गुड न्यूज. तो बहुत सारे ऐसे प्रावधान हैं बजट में, अगर आप देखते हैं, जो हमें लगता है कि एक्चुअली बहुत सही रास्ते दिखाता हुआ है बजट लेके जा रहा है. लास्ट ईयर अगर आपको याद हो तो हमारा फिस्कल डिफिसिट था 9.2%, और हमारा टारगेट था that this year we could really come closer to around 680 to 690. Broadly we happen to hover around that, and next year हम बोल रहे हैं 640 जा रहे हैं. So overall जो हमारा फिस्कल डेफिसिट का जो सोच ये है कि धीरे धीरे हम ऑफ कोर्स 9% चले गए, बिकॉज मे बी 4% से हम 9% गए बिकॉज वी हैड अ कोविड, and we also we wanted to basically push that growth path more, and then not less worry about maybe the other things. So the priority was given more on maybe the growth. So once we really moved in terms of fiscal deficit of 9%, then gradually we have committed to ourselves in terms of our fiscal prudence. Government has done that, saying that over next few years we'll go back to maybe 5.5 or maybe those numbers, and that's what maybe the trajectory looks like. Last year it was 9.2. This year, of course, budgetary estimates is 6.8, 6.9. We would really be able to get it. Maybe, who knows, it could really be closer to around 6.80 itself, final number, because there are a lot of buoyancy in terms of the taxation currently. And next year we are saying 6.4, and further to that, maybe it could really be closer to around 6, which is where maybe the fiscal consolidation path is really happening. So I'm not really unduly worried at this juncture about the fiscal deficit. Yes, market has not, fixed income market especially, जो कि अपना debt market है, has not really liked it so much. And the reason is that they are looking at larger government borrowing. And of course, the larger government borrowing, because there is a relatively more push towards the spending on capital expenditure. There is also push towards maybe infrastructure. The money has to be funded from somewhere. So clearly, the market borrowing or the government will really borrow on next year is relatively on the higher side. But I am quite hopeful, optimistic कि ये जो नंबर जो अभी बताया जा रहा है बजट में, शायद वो नंबर जैसा लास्ट ईयर भी हमने देखा, वो नंबर नहीं होकर के थोड़ा कम होने की संभावना है. बिकॉज जो हमने देखा लास्ट ईयर इन टर्म्स ऑफ द टैक्स वायंसी, जो इनिशियली बजट में जो हमारा नंबर को जो सोचा गया था, उससे इस बार का नंबर be on the low, almost 9 to 10% itself is on the higher side, which basically gives a lot of scope for us that next year, when we are looking at a growth in terms of GDP close to around 9%, and then we all know thoda inflation system mein hoga, which could really be closer to around 5 to 6 as a number. So we are talking about nominal GDP growth of close to around 14 to 15%. Now 14 to 15% अगर हमारी nominal GDP growth है, तो tax buoyancy should really move closer to at least maybe 12 to 15 as a number. Even if you look at very conservatively, 12% number is a very, very doable number. And that is the reason I really feel that next year, I would not really be surprised that these numbers in terms of tax buoyancy would really look very different. Just last month, which is like January, we have seen 1,41,000 crore tax collection in terms of GST, which is a one of maybe highest number that we really have seen. And that's how the hope is. Of course, it's not like January, because January is coming on the back of December, because the most of the payment would have come for the month of December. But if you really look at December, was not like maybe okay, it was one of the best month that we really had. It's going to get better. Maybe perhaps February or maybe March could really get better than maybe those numbers. And hence I'm quite hopeful that maybe in terms of tax buoyancy, we would be surprised in terms of positive side. And that's the reason I'm saying at this juncture, market is worried about fiscal deficit. But as we go on, people would realize that these numbers are very conservative, and hence there is not much to really worry about in terms of the market borrowing. I would also like to talk that maybe it's not that maybe यूनियन बजट 2022 में गवर्नमेंट ने सब कुछ कर दिया. मैं फॉर अ मिनट आई एम नॉट रियली सेइंग it's a very bold good intent by government to really do all the right thing. There could have been maybe something which could have really done, and perhaps one segment of the market, which is fixed income market, is thoda disappointed hai, because budget did not resolve the taxation issue for FII, which has been roadblock for the inclusion of Indian bonds in the global debt indices. This has taken relatively negative at this juncture by the debt market, and that's the reason you really saw the debt 10-year paper in India. The yield has really moved up by closer to around 20-22 per bips. But I'm quite hopeful here as well that this is not an item which can only be taken in budget. If this is a need, and perhaps if government really thinks that this is where maybe perhaps our priority lies, there could really be outside the budget, these things could really be addressed. So yes, clearly the market was expecting at this juncture to happen the same thing in budget, but I guess this is not the only one time window that you really see in one year. These are all open items which can really be taken beyond budget and outside the budget itself, and I'm quite hopeful this would really be taken. Apart from that, maybe I would really say in terms of housing was a segment where government could have done a little bit more in terms of rewarding or giving more tax deduction on the housing loans to provide impetus to the housing sectors, and couple of more segments could have really been given some sort of taxation benefit. But I think the approach of government is very clearly on a very different line, and perhaps this is where we really need to understand and respect the thought of government. The thought is, we are not here to give a simple dole out. We are here to ensure that the growth is the paramount and the growth is supreme, and that's how we really need to ensure to do everything so that विकास की गति ज्यादा बढ़े. And at the same time, मैं dole out नहीं करूं, so that I really continue to get better revenue stream, better tax income to spend that money on a capital expenditure, on a infrastructure, on a related stuff, to ensure that we move to the place where we intend to go. We want the India to become 5 trillion economy. this is how the path is, and this is what maybe the government approach is, that the dole out will not take us there. What we really need to do is basically to push the economy towards less of populism, more on a growth path. And that's how the budget actually intend to do it. The government is rightly betting that a fast growing economy will generate employment, which will take care of many problems being faced by bottom of pyramid of a larger country like India. And we hope that maybe this endeavor would really bear fruit maybe in next few years. So, Ashish, I think this is what I was trying to summarize the budget. And
Thank you.
maybe if you really have some question and somebody would really have that, I would really be happy to answer those questions as well, Ashish.
Yeah,
So,
thank you,
over to
Neeraj.
you.
Thanks for that. Very. I think it was a pretty descriptive and insightful to hear that, and we have a lot of questions. But before we jump into the questions from audience, I have a question. You used the word physical deficit. I heard it from yesterday from our finance minister also coming in. Would you be able to help us थोड़ा सा समझाएंगे फिजिकल डिफिसिट होता क्या है और इससे एक आम इन्वेस्टर पर एक आम आदमी की बजट पर हाउ डज इट इम्पैक्ट्स अ कॉमन मैन.
So very simply, Ashish, because मैं I will not use any jargon. चूंकि अक्सर क्या होता है कि किसी चीज को समझाने में हम कुछ और नए जार्गन बता देते हैं, ठीक है.
कंप्लीटली
So I
एग्री.
will not do that. सो ए है डिफरेंस दोनों के बीच का आमदनी और खर्चा. सो जिस तरह से हमारी एक आमदनी है, सपोज एक नंबर है, और हमारी आमदनी और हमारा खर्चा बहुत डिफरेंस नहीं हो सकता. हम जो खर्चा करेंगे हम वो बोरो करके खर्चा नहीं करना चाहिए. सो वही डिफरेंस है वो फिस्कल डेफिसिट में. गवर्नमेंट की एक आमदनी है और एक खर्चा है. वो खर्चे और आमदनी का जो गैप है, वो जो इस साल आपने देखा, हमने जो अगले साल के लिए प्रावधान किया है बजट में, जो आप निर्मला सीतारमन ने जो बजट में प्रावधान किया है, वो 6.4% का है, विच बेसिकली मीन्स कि हम 6.4% ऑफ मेरी जो एबिलिटी है वो ज्यादा कर लेंगे इस साल. खर्चा ज्यादा करेंगे दैन इनकम से, और कहीं और से हम फंड करेंगे. बट वो हमारा एक इम्पॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट है कि हम वो नंबर को ज्यादा आगे ना बढ़ने दें. जैसे हम और आप क्या करते हैं, हमारा आपका आमदनी जितना है उतना ही खर्चा होगा. थोड़े बहुत आप लोन लेकर के खर्चा कर लेते हैं, एंड बट यू मेंटेन मे बी अ बैलेंस कि नहीं, हमें इससे ज्यादा लोन नहीं लेना है. Similarly, government is also doing the, when we really say fiscal deficit का जो number है 6.4 is nothing that basically would get funded through a loan. And that is why it is important कि वो जो खर्चा है वो ज्यादा ना हो, और उसको जो मापने का जो मापदंड जो हमारा है या जो अर्थशास्त्री यूज करते हैं उसको फिस्कल डेफिसिट बोलते हैं. यानी कि खर्चा माइनस आमदनी का जो गैप है उसको आप फिस्कल डेफिसिट सिंपल लैंग्वेज में यूज कर सकते हैं.
वेरी एप्टली पुट नीरज. तो इससे एक आम आदमी की जिंदगी पे अगर गवर्नमेंट अपनी आमदनी से ज्यादा खर्चा करती है तो एक आम आदमी के जीवन पे क्या असर पड़ता है, एक उसके घर की बजट पे कैसा असर पड़ता है.
सो इस बार अगर देखें बजट के प्रावधान को, तो बजट में जो पूरा जोर दिया गया है वो पूरा जोर इस बात के ऊपर है कि हमें अपने इकोनॉमी का ग्रोथ को कैसे बढ़ाए, कैसे उसको. अगर वो फिलहाल लास्ट फ्यू इयर्स आपने देखा था कि 2018-19 में थोड़ा टफ फेज थे हमारे लिए. ऑफ लेट वी आर गेटिंग बेटर, वी हैव अंडरस्टूड कि हमें प्रायोरिटाइज क्या करना है, तो थिंग्स हैव स्टार्टेड गेटिंग बेटर. हमारी जो जनता और जो लोग हैं, हमारी जो ऑडियंस है, उनके लिए सिंपल ये है कि जो बजट है इज गिविंग अ वे टू इंश्योर दैट विकास की गति आगे ज्यादा ज्यादा हो, सो दैट इन्वायरमेंट हम जिसमें काम करते हैं या हमारी जो इकोनॉमिक इन्वायरमेंट हो वो ज़्यादा बेहतर हो, हम ज़्यादा compete कर सके बाहर के कंट्री से जब हम वी आर लुकिंग टू एक्सपोर्ट, हम इंपोर्ट पे कम अपने आप को व्यवस्थित रखें, हमें कोशिश करना है कि हम आत्मनिर्भर बने। सो ये सारे जो पॉइंटर्स हैं, यही बजट के जो जो मेन स्तंभ रहे हैं। एंड इसी के आसपास पूरा बजट, नॉट मे बी दिस टाइम, लास्ट टाइम और मे बी बिफोर दैट, बट द लास्ट टाइम जो बजट आया था वो इट वाज एक्चुअली अ वेरी पाथ ब्रेकिंग बजट। उसने एक स्टेटमेंट था, उसमें एक विजन था कि अगले हम 10-15 साल के लिए और मे बी फॉर सम टाइम एटलीस्ट we are going to follow this as an approach, and this budget actually is almost on the similar line, just trying to follow what actually has set as a tone maybe by the previous budget. So mostly it is good. It's a environment जो कि कोशिश की जा रही है कि ज़्यादा अच्छा हो, सो दैट लोगों को एम्प्लॉयमेंट ज़्यादा मिले, ज़्यादा अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ मिले, आ, थोड़ा मुद्रास्फीति जो इन्फ्लेशन बोलते हैं वो सिचुएशंस ज़्यादा खराब ना हो. And so far so good. Lot of countries across the world has actually been facing severe pressure of maybe mudrasfiti or inflation. हमें भी है. We have also seen steepest rise of late maybe in couple of segment, but फिलहाल इंडिया में उतना बड़ा प्रॉब्लम नहीं हुआ है जितना किसी दूसरी कंट्रीज में हमने ऑफ लेट देखे हैं. So clearly it's a problem, but it is a very well managed and relatively better for India than any other countries in the world currently.
Thank you, Neeraj. Thanks. That explains very clearly. Neeraj, we have a question coming from Rajagopal. Rajagopal wants to know that do you think FIIs will continue to sell as the taxation part on FIIs is not discussed in budget? Is budget is going to have any kind of an impact on FIIs?
नो, सो जब हमने बात की बजट में कौन से पार्ट को बजट में नहीं लिया गया है, दैट वाज मोर टू डू विद द फिक्स्ड इनकम इंस्ट्रूमेंट. इट वाज नॉट फॉर इक्विटी. सो अगर इक्विटी में देखेंगे तो उसका इम्पैक्ट कुछ है नहीं. इक्विटी इनफैक्ट एंड वो आज का नंबर देखिए या कल का नंबर देखिए, इज जस्ट ऑलरेडी स्टार्टेड गेटिंग बेटर, बिकॉज जो लोगों का फियर था इंडिया में, यूजुअली आप देखते हैं ना जो बाहर से लोग आते हैं उनका फियर होता है कि इंडियंस तो उनके टिपिकल बजट में क्या होता है, पॉपुलिज्म होता है, कि वो पॉपुलिस्ट बजट होता है, जनता के लिए बजट बनाते हैं, विकास के लिए बजट नहीं बनाते हैं. लास्ट 2-3 सालों में हमें वो चेंज दिखने को मिल रहा है. इस साल भी वो चेंज दिखने को आया है. तो यस, बजट के पहले FIIs वेयर लिटिल एप्रीहेंसिव कि कहीं कुछ प्रॉब्लम ना हो इन टर्म्स ऑफ ज़्यादा पॉपुलिस्ट बजट ना हो जाए, या ज़्यादा टैक्सेशन ज़्यादा ना हो जाए इन टर्म्स ऑफ लॉन्ग टर्म और शॉर्ट टर्म. That could have spoiled maybe some bit of or put some bit of nervousness in terms of market. But clearly, budget has ensured that maybe all this is not really done and not really touched upon, and that's a very good news. And that is the reason that last अगर 2 महीने 3 महीने से देखें तो FII is anyway has actually been a seller, not because of India, because of global regions, but they were actually a seller. Last few days, I think last kal or maybe today also, we can see some bit of stability coming back. So equity market, I don't think any problem that maybe FII would really be having. FII would be more than happy to really see this type of budget. Fixed income side, जो कि डेट मार्केट हम बोलते हैं, वहां पर थोड़ा सा नर्वसनेस आएगा, बट एज आई सेड दैट मे बी ओके. It's only there are something that when you really do, with time it changes. When you would really see and get more handle in terms of the numbers, कि number जो बोला गया है वो शायद it could really get better. And then when RBI की policy है कुछ दिनों बाद, और उस policies में भी would RBI will also do ensure that maybe okay they really calm the nerves of the market. And then who knows, government could really come out maybe in next few months to ensure that maybe okay जो कि बजट में नहीं किया गया है उसको भी टेकल किया जाएगा, and then things could really change maybe for the fixed income market also. So clearly no negative for FI perspective for equity, temporary negative for FI perspective for the debt segment, but I think it is not really hugely negative. I think it is and something which could really be done outside the budget as well. I'm hoping that maybe okay government and RBI will really do something to suit the norms of that market as
Thank you, Neeraj. Neeraj, India is largely a very young country. We have one of the youngest population. Okay, and this next question, which has come from Hemant, is towards that only. That how do you think what measures this budget has taken, and what kind of an impact do you think it will have on employment generation for first timers? I mean, people who are currently studying are going to get into colleges this year or in next couple of years. What kind of a incentives, what kind of a stimulus has been provided, which will help to get them a job or probably keep first 5 years young executives
well.
kind of a profile? Yeah.
Very interesting, Assis. And I think the budget is intended to do this itself. Budget is not, and that is what maybe we have started seeing. अगर इस साल देखते हैं, more or less there is a buoyancy, not only because of India, it's also because of the global stuff. The way maybe in terms of the job market has actually been. Look at IT companies. They have been hiring in last maybe 6 months, 8 months, just all over the places. So it's has been quite interesting to really see a lot of people really getting opportunities, and this has happened because there are a lot of things as an economy that maybe perhaps we would have really started doing long back when the IT boom was way back in 2000, and then we really created a very right type of atmosphere for a IT, and that is really yielding fruit to us. The same would really now, there are a number of startups in last maybe 5 7 years 8 years that we really have seen in India really growing in terms of size, and a lot of policy decision was actually, or government has come out with number of policy decisions to help those segments. Those segments have started yielding the results. Now there is another segment which is government is actually in terms of trying to work, which is Make in India or a PLI scheme, the manufacturing push, and that has already started to some extent maybe yielding results. But I see that as a segment would really give desired output and desired result after 3 to 4 years. So that segment would really create massive employment opportunities for India. Then you were talking about in this budget certain segments which is like related to a newer, either the drone or the AI based, and those which is like the new age sort of technology. And this is where again government has already started. Maybe those opportunity will come maybe 5 years, 7 years in a big way, but clearly the policy push has already started. So I see, I'm quite positive and quite optimist. What the government has done in last few years is already yielding results, and I'm sure that maybe in terms of policy decision, what is really being taken will also yield maybe desired output maybe in future, because we have clearly done good enough on when it really comes to services. What was missing piece in India uh, was the manufacturing, and this government, not from now, maybe for last 6 7 years, has actually been continuously in each meeting or in each opportunity wherever they really get, or in each budget, you can really see continuous push by government of India to ensure that as a manufacturing as a base really moves up on the higher side. So clearly that's a segment to me looks very promising, not immediately, because of course, as you know, that maybe it takes time to basically create that environment, create that maybe okay, somebody push somebody to, or inculcate the habit of manufacturing, uh, create that maybe some sort of risk capital, that somebody should really be ready to put that maybe risk capital on a manufacturing, because India per se has not really been a great manufacturing country in last maybe, and that's the reason we actually became quite dependent. But of course we are gradually coming out, and I'm sure what we really have done wonder in terms of service sector, the IT, there would be a time maybe 3 or 4 year down the line, there would be certain segments where we could really take pride in saying that okay, today also we have certain segment, look at maybe automobiles, we have done reasonably well. So there could be maybe number of other segment in manufacturing where we would really be saying proudly that oh no, this is also another segment that we really have and we have done well and we are looking going to do phenomenally well. So I hope that maybe that as a segment should really give a lot of opportunity for employment creation in next few years.
यस नीरज, आई थिंक काफी होपफुल है ये। और आई मीन आई थिंक देश को भी यही उम्मीद है बजट से कि एम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़े, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग बढ़े। बिकॉज ऑफ सर्विसेज में तो हम काफी अच्छा कर रहे हैं। अगर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग भी इस तरफ आके शामिल होता है और हमारे देश के युवाओं को रोजगार मिलता है, यहाँ पर नए नए व्यवसाय या रोजगार करने के अवसर मिलते हैं, तो उससे शायद देश की प्रगति में हमको सहायता मिलेगी। इसी से देयर इज अ क्वेश्चन व्हिच इज related to that, this only Neeraj, and that is coming from Saurabh. Saurabh is asking that given the entire stimulus and there was a push around creating the entire this affordable housing, okay, which was there, is there does the budget will have any impact on home loan rates? Because of you have interest, you are playing, you were talking about inflation, you were talking about budgetary measures to control uh, some aspects in terms of putting a lot of capital expenditure. How will it impact the home loan rates for a common man?
So I think home loan rate not in India, Ashish, is going to go up. Okay, in near future, maybe perhaps
That
for a
doesn't
year.
sound a very good news.
So, but it is less to do with the budget because budget has only ability to tackle some part of it. Okay, which is related to government. When it comes to the interest rate environment, it is more driven by the policy stance of the RBI, the inflation in the global environment, the global monetary policy framework, what you really have. And if you really look at not only in India, across the globe, we have seen interest rate has already started rising. Yield, which is basically the paper that maybe for this particular countries or any countries that you really look at, was maybe would have moved maybe almost 100 bips across the globe in last maybe one year per se. Whether you look at India or you look at maybe US, more or less you would really find. So somewhere it has to actually start reflecting in the home loan or the interest rate environment as well. But let me give some sort of maybe uh, better this one that it's not going to go dramatically to a very different level. Yes, it will go maybe by 50 bips here and there, but it's not going to make go on a very different line. And hence, I don't see in terms of affordability is going to be a big issue because all we know, all of us really knows the fact that in last few years, last 2 years, 2.5 years, interest rate has come off quite sharply. Now, globally, if it is rising, then India cannot be exception. Even if the Indian government or Indian RBI or the monetary policy really wants, we cannot really be in isolation of a global trend because the more or less each country is very interlinked, and hence you the other countries will have an impact on India. India will have an impact on the other countries. We all very interlinked in economy that we live today. So I would say yes, it will go up slightly from here on, maybe 50 bips, but it's not going to be exorbitantly expensive in terms of borrowing home loan.
Okay, thank you. That I mean, it is my heartbeat was almost up when you said that home loan rates are going up, but now I think it's settling down. So thank you for giving that hope and that clarity, Neeraj. Neeraj, there is a very close question to the one which we just picked. Okay, and this question is coming from Tejal. She's asking that, I mean, typically for a common man there are three four things which a common man looks from budget. It's about employment, it's about home loans, and the third and most awaited news from home, which is from budget, is that the finance minister will come and announce some respite on taxation slabs which are income tax typically. Okay, we haven't heard anything from at least in this budget we haven't heard any change in that. Okay, how do you think this is going to impact the at least the spending mood of a common man, and how does it disrupt the budgeting and equations given that inflation has taken away some bit of a income or some bit of a at least the spending power from a common household budget. How does it impact?
Yeah, so it has been tough because crude globally, as you know, that may be okay, and all of us knows that India hardly produce crude, which is the raw material for petrol and diesel, and we have to import. A year and a half back, we were importing at $30 and $40. Today, the rate has moved to maybe almost $90. And that's the reason you really have seen what was the diesel and petrol price was close, used to be around 60 rupees, is now close to maybe 90 or 100, depending on where you really look at and when you are looking at. So clearly, that has been maybe one of a reason that people have really felt that pinch in terms of daily spending and on their wallet shot up, the pressure that maybe all of us has got. But I guess the answer doesn't really is not very simple here. Even if government and I see that maybe this would really happen maybe somewhere down the line, government either has to take that maybe the taxation bit to the GST, and that could also change to some extent maybe the rates should really go down, but the ability that they really have is not more than maybe all put together government and state could really be closer to around 5 to 8 rupees. And I'm hopeful that maybe as the things goes, and if the tax buoyancy is not a problem, government may really look at some juncture to really give that sort of uh, support, or that sort of maybe changes, that sort of make changes to ensure that maybe these petroleum prices actually comes down. But I would say that even if it happens, it would happen to only an extent of maybe 5 to 8 rupees by government, both government, state and center. The biggest change, if that happens, could happen by because of the crude prices. Today crude price is close to 90, and a lot of countries have already started moving in terms of tightening of the interest rate, which basically means that somewhere down the line this tightening would really ensure that inflation, because that's what the intent is, inflation needs to come down. And how the inflation comes down? Because these prices of either crude or all commodities have to start correcting. And that's the perhaps that would be the bigger swing that maybe perhaps the Aam Janta could really get a favor if those stuff start working and the crude really moves down from maybe 90 odd to 75, which is a very fair level for a long term crude to really hold. And that could really give much needed respite for Aam Janta. And I'm hopeful that maybe okay, not immediately, but because we are amidst a lot of geopolitical tension, whether you look at US, Russia, Ukraine, or you look at maybe China or Australia, you currently have a lot of geopolitical tension. So amidst this, it is relatively difficult at this juncture, but I'm hopeful that after 3 months down the line, when we really see that this escalation is not really getting uglier, maybe crude would start moving back towards southward. And that would really be good news for all of us.
Thanks, Neeraj. I mean, one after another, some consolation at least, or some good news should bring some cheer to our viewers and listeners who are kind of currently watching us. Neeraj, I have a related question, and this is while I was listening to you, I was also recollecting what I heard our finance minister say yesterday. Okay, there was a very specific mention about doing the e-vehicle push. So whether it was the battery swapping policy or whether talking about building the infrastructure about e-vehicles and things like that. Do you think that in near future, okay, and if not in near future, what do you think is a timeline, okay? And does I mean I couldn't go deeper into budget if you have had a pre-read of it or a read of it what union government has presented. Do you think there is any chance that that will have some impact on our petrol or crude bill, and which then can help us save some forex, which will internally at the end of the day is going to bring in respite for a common man?
So precisely, Ashish, the idea is that itself. Okay. Not only India, globally also we know that carbon footprint has to really come down. We are actually taking a lot of measures globally in terms of decarbonizations and all that. So that's the idea that maybe that you have now this new type of vehicle which is really coming, electric vehicle, and this would could really be a panacea of most of our problems. As of now, this is just still evolving because there is a technology, and you really know whenever you really work on anything which is new, it gets obsolete very fast, and it is relatively expensive also when you are actually working on a new technology. So clearly, the push by government, not only in India, globally, is huge by almost all the country. They are actually offering a lot of subsidies, and the reason is pretty simple. The reason is today's expense in terms of either subsidizing or towards maybe incentivizing is tomorrow's choice of prosperity or option of prosperity that one would really have as a nation. And that's the reason you look at maybe countries like Germany, which is actually spending a lot of money in terms of incentivizing the EV. And EV is, we all understand, if you are a country like India, we are quite dependent on crude and uh, petroleum products to really get imported, and our bills are in upward of maybe $100 billion every year. And if that is, these are the numbers every year that we really have, and we are actually importing those numbers. Just think around what sort of changes that we can really have if we reduce to a significant number and we really move towards EV. It could really be game changer for India, clearly, and that's how the government is actually looking at. That's how the policies are actually being designed currently. But we are still maybe, I think, 3 to 4 years away from that to happen. So yes, crude which actually hovers around 90 will really struggle to get a feet closer to in fact 75 also, because the demand supply dynamics maybe 4 year down the line should really change dramatically if a very stable technology in EV is we really see, and in terms of the unit cost, because that's another problem that we really have, and the costing of those EV, actually if it comes, then things can really turn very fast for countries like India. So this is pretty good news. This is something that maybe I think the whole world is really waiting. How this transformation from the current segment, which is like maybe petroleum vehicle, move towards to maybe to EV, and we are seeing this is really happening at a very massive pace. But it's just that the magnitude and the scale is so large that today we may not really see the impact. It is only maybe 3 to 4 year down the line we would really see the impact coming in, and that would really make a lot of difference in terms of, one, of course, our consumption in terms of petroleum, which would go down, and that would mean that maybe okay, our dependency is on petrol, and hence the prices of petrol should also really go downward. So clearly quite positive when you really look at maybe for a medium term perspective from 3 to 4 years. And I think that's our future. I think nobody can really deny the fact that EV is the future. And any country who actually has chosen to incentivize that as a technology and that as a platform would really do well. And if you look at, just to give an analogy here, Germany is one country, if you really know, maybe perhaps most of these names, whether look at maybe BMW or Volkswagen or Audi or perhaps you really Mercedes. Most of these companies are actually from Germany, and they are the one who is actually facing a lot of burn, because if these entities are not really going to be there tomorrow, because if EV is the new mantra, and if EV means that maybe Tesla or maybe something else which is coming out from maybe China, perhaps a lot of countries will really find it very difficult to really replicate that success that they have actually done and seen so far in automobile industry, including India as well. We have seen good success when it really comes to it automobile, especially a small one. Uh, so these countries have started incentivizing because there is not much of choice. You really need to incentivize to understand what is going wrong in terms of the product offering. How do we really get better? Because unless people really start using as a technology, then only you know, okay, this is where the problem is. They really need to go through that learning curve, and which is where the push that maybe from government should really come, whether it is Germany, whether it is India, whether any country for that matter. We are seeing it globally happening, and we are seeing it in India too. I think the pace could really get better. We can get more incentivization. I think that's where maybe perhaps the hope and the expectation from government. But so far, government has done wonderful job to 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 incentivize and to subsidize and to do whatever they best that they can really do. We hope that it continues and we really see some changes.
Yet another exciting news. In a short, I can say the more people will drive EV, the more people will get the petrol and diesels
Yeah,
cheaper. So, guys, that's the time for you to decide. Get a EV and make the petrol prices cheaper. I think, in a very nutshell, we can say that.
yeah.
Need a couple of last questions. In fact, I mean, if you want to summarize in say about a minute, what in terms of while we spoke about these three pillars separately, one was interest, one was income and job opportunities, and the third was the overall taxation. Okay, do you want to give a summary to a common man, probably somebody who is earning between 2 lakh to 5 lakh rupees? What does what should he or she expect from this budget? Okay, and what should they do to be able to optimize their entire earnings and spending potential?
This budget doesn't have much in terms of the new uh, caveat or new policy, new changes that maybe perhaps we really used to see in terms of the budget प्रावधान जो होता है for maybe आम जनता in terms of the taxation. So they have not really touched that bit. But what I really see is uh, if you are looking at, if you are a simple household looking at in terms of uh, your own cash flows and your own basically spending, I would say this budget actually is taking care to a large extent in terms of your opportunities available in the market. कि जिस इन्वायरमेंट में आप काम करते हैं वो आपकी जॉब सही रहे, जिस इन्वायरमेंट में आप काम करते हैं वो इन्वायरमेंट कंड्यूसिव रहे, एंड हाउ वी रियली इंश्योर दैट मे बी वो कंड्यूसिव रहे, वो इसलिए बिकॉज आपको जीडीपी ग्रोथ हमें जो चाहिए इन टर्म्स ऑफ इंडिया टू रियली इंश्योर दैट एवरीथिंग ऑल ऑफ पीपल अराउंड अस इज एक्चुअली ग्रोइंग. यही इस पूरे बजट का एक कोशिश है कि लेस फोकस ऑन इंडिविजुअल, मोर फोकस ऑन अ कंट्री. एंड एक कोशिश है कि अगर कंट्री को हम पुश करेंगे और हम वो सारे चीज करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं जो कि कंट्री को इन टर्म्स ऑफ ग्रोथ, इन टर्म्स ऑफ टोटल एबिलिटी एक्चुअली मूव्स ऑन द हायर स्केल. ऑफ कोर्स जो रिलेटेड लोग हैं, जो जुड़े हुए लोग हैं, चाहे वो आम जनता हो, हम हो, आप हो, और एनीबडी हो, should really get better opportunities or get better. That's how it is. So it is less centric on कि टैक्स कहाँ से आए, बचा है या नहीं बचा है, या शायद गवर्नमेंट ने हैज नॉट रियली लेफ्ट और गिवन एडिशनल sort of maybe taxation relief. But clearly the idea was little different this time. The idea was to ensure कि हम अभी पैंडेमिक से बाहर आ रहे हैं. पहले इकोनॉमी को ठीक कीजिए, लोगों की जो जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटीज हैं उनको बढ़ाइए, और अगर वो बढ़ेगा तो नेचुरली सबका ग्रोथ अपने आप आएगा. सो दैट्स हाउ दिस मीन्स. एंड ओनली पॉइंटर्स दैट आई वुड रिलेट हियर, एक वर्ड जो हमने बात की फिस्कल डेफिसिट, it's very important to ensure that maybe okay amdani and kharcha is always matched and we don't really rely too much on borrowing. This government is also looking to do that. We are seeing that progressively वो numbers कम हो रहे हैं, एंड आम जनता से भी यही रहेगा कि रिलायंस ऑन टू मच कंज्यूमरिज्म should really be reduced, or even if that happens, the leverage should really not go beyond a certain threshold, a comfort zone. So आप अपने comfort zone में रख करके अपना जो plan होता है usual saving का, I think one really need to focus. Market has actually been very rewarding, as you really know, and all of us really have seen last 3 years, 4 years. Market has actually been very, very rewarding. So clearly, it's a very good time for arm investors or arm janta to really think of investing. And we have couple of product in our arsenal, which could really be chosen as one of the better product of the market. And we definitely have those best product of the market, and we are giving plethora of investment option, right from maybe traditional to maybe ULIP. Within ULIP, maybe perhaps pure equity, or then maybe we have the fixed income product as well. So clearly it's and not only maybe future general age option for anybody. You have an option in mutual fund, you have the other option. So clearly saving is something which is very, very important. One really need to plan your financial goal, ensure that maybe you are actually seeing it and reviewing that financial goal every year as you progress in your life, in your career, and your requirement, it should really suit to your new requirements. So keep rebalancing, because market also has changed, and hence that's what I would really suggest to all of our audience or investors, that uh, financial goal is very, very important for all of us, and we need to ensure that maybe okay, we really keep looking at and keep reworking every year to suit our needs, and to modify it if there is a need, because of personal exigencies, personal reason, or because of the market movement.
That was that should have been helpful to our listeners who are tuning in at this point in time. Just for those who have just come in, we are just taking one last question, and we are kind of trying to demystify the budgets with our chief investment officer, Mr. Niraj. Niraj, I will club probably two questions in one and try to kind of get your views upon it. See, Neeraj, there is a lot of optimism around the equity market. We have seen some real big IPOs going in last year, and we are seeing some of the companies which are IPO bound in coming year. How does this budget, or will this budget have any impact or prospect, or will anyway impact the equity market and the IPOs which are upcoming? That is part one of the question. Part two of the question, which I would want you to address, is there is there is a lot of talk around this entire digital currency and digital everything digital. So they are talking about making the post offices connected, giving the banking services and core banking, getting their digital banking. There is a talk of digital currency. I mean, you are RBI trying to give being given, and there is a flying statement around it there in the budget which says that we will probably look at a digital currency and the central bank will start planning around it. Okay, what is government trying to do, and how does it impact the small businesses or people like you and me? Both these, a quick reaction to these. I mean,
Yeah.
am I sure if there's a quick reaction? The
Yeah,
question
yeah,
itself is pretty long.
yeah, Ashish. So we're living in a world which is, we all call this as a digital world, and that's the reason maybe you are seeing day in day out focus on digital, everything around us. Okay, so clearly this government last 6 7 years has actually been continuously doing a lot of things, trying to digitize, trying to make that maybe okay, move to a very faster pace, and that brings efficiency. We really need to understand why it is really being done. It is being done because it brings efficiency. It brings that maybe more than efficiency, it also brings the ease of doing everything. And more importantly, it is reducing the timeline. So what we used to really take longer, maybe perhaps is not really going to take as much time. So clearly, whether you look at post office, what they are trying to do, look at maybe perhaps in terms of the banking system, they have been able to do. Everything has really worked wonder. I would not really be, in fact, surprised when can say that maybe India could really be emerged, or maybe already we are there in terms of one of the technologically uh, the best placed banking system that maybe one could really have currently. In terms of look at maybe the success of UPI and everything is just had been mind blowing. Okay, so clearly that's the mantra of government, and that's a very right intent, and it has really done phenomenally well for India as a country. Things has really got a lot better, and I'm sure that maybe it will continue to get better. So that's my bit in terms of digitization. About the digital currencies, your question was, I think the government is trying to intent, at least at this juncture, which is relatively very bold at this juncture, that there are so many currencies which is actually on the name of digital and crypto, which is really coming. And perhaps government is thinks that maybe okay, there is a need, and we all understand if there is no harm in uh, trying out that whether there is a need or no, and try and understand that if there is a segment which is actually quite comfortable with this type of product, why not maybe something should really come from RBI. That's the approach, rather than coming it from maybe somebody else. The problem with the crypto is like you don't have so much of faith. You don't really know how many would really survive after maybe 10 years, after 5 years. We have seen the survival rate of most of these crypto are not more than maybe 1%. Okay, it's as bad as it is. So yes, there are a couple of crypto which has done well, which has relatively got uh, the faith of the market and the market participants over longer period of time, but the masses and most of the segment have not been able to get. So the idea here by government is two. One is to ensure that maybe if the crypto or maybe the digital could really be come out from maybe the RBI itself, and hence maybe relatively acceptability would relatively be better, and you don't really run the risk. Also, you ensure that maybe those guys who are actually coming to you as a competition in terms of your own rupees is no longer as such a competition, because you have another option given by RBI and given by the country itself. So the idea seems to basically compete there and ensure that maybe okay, you are better placed than them. The second one, at this juncture, they have still not legalized crypto. They have just taxed. Taxation is important because there is a segment which has actually been investing for last 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, and they have made quite good money in that segment. Because crypto as a currency, as a basket, has really done well in last few years, and they need to really be paying their own dues in terms of taxation to the country, so that we really as a country uh, continue to really spend wherever we really intend to. And that's the idea. So those people should not really get scot free in terms of taxation. That's the idea. So clearly the budget has intended to do that. And so for me, I would say it's an interesting time. It's acceptance of the fact that this crypto and these digital currencies is going to be there, and it's a very transformative from the government to really accept that fact that maybe okay, this is going to stay, and let's really fight out than basically just shying away. So clearly, I'm quite overwhelmed with the fact that maybe they have really done whatever is really needed in that space.
Thanks, Neeraj. I completely agree. I think as you when you the way you have detailed it out, I mean, at least I'm very optimistic now that we are on a right growth path.
Yeah.
Before we close, Neeraj,
We have taken head on to a lot of issues. Whether you look at in terms of the growth, you look at the fiscal deficit, you look at maybe the digital side, the approach has actually been take head on.
yeah, I
And that's
completely.
where maybe perhaps I would really say this budget signifies. The significance, if I really have to put it, saying that maybe okay, fight it out. That's the mantra. Looks like.
And I think uh, with the given the size of a country and given the way the environment is, I think I would certainly be uh, looking at things improving. I think things which are being done. in terms of capital expenditure to improve the health of economy are only going to be positive. On that note, Neeraj, thanks a ton. Thanks a lot for pulling time off. Any
Yeah.
parting comments for our viewers, Neeraj? Probably a line or two.
No, we had. I would just maybe end up saying that we happen to be living in a very interesting time for India. We should really be proud that we all are really seeing the changes that we really have seen in last 10 years, 15 years in India. And I'm sure that maybe in next 5 7 years we would really see significant change. And we all would really be proud. We all, of course, are proud at this juncture itself. But the way the country is shaping, the way maybe perhaps we a lot of things are really changing, I'm sure that maybe okay, all of us would really be more prouder as we really progress. So thank you so
Thank,
much, guys.
thank you, Neeraj. Thanks for joining in. And on that note, I would like to inform to all our viewers not to forget liking our page. Hit that subscribe button right now so that you are able to get all informed about all the actions we have upcoming and lined up for you. And thank you. Thanks once again for joining in and being so patient and sharing all the questions. I hope we were able to answer your queries, and this session helps you in increasing your knowledge about economy, about taking right financial decisions. And at any point in time you have a financial query, you want to figure out how to take the right financial decision, head out to life.futuregenerali.in and please click send me an advisor button, fill up your details, and one of our financial experts will call you up to tell you about how we can help, how you can do your entire financial planning. On that note, thank you, be safe, take care of yourself, good night.